Welcome to the Podcaster Hour from ECAMM, helping entrepreneurs, business owners, and live streamers launch a podcast with success using the power of ECAMM Live. Grow your audience and expand your reach, and learn how to plan, promote, produce, and repurpose your live show and podcast. Here's your host, Ian Anderson Gray.
Hello, everybody. Welcome to the show. My name's Ian Anderson Gray. Welcome to the Podcast Hour. This is the show that helps you launch a successful podcast from your live show through the power of ECAMM Live. So if you're watching the replay, do put hashtag replay in the comments. Also, I want to know from you, have you launched your podcast yet? Have you got a podcast? If you haven't, what is stopping you? I'd love to know. Now, I've been playing around with some really cool stuff. I don't know whether this is working, but I've been playing with audio ducking. Now, you might be wondering, what on earth is audio ducking? This is the ability to play music in the background, and hopefully it is fading down when I'm speaking. Let me know if it does that. This is just a new thing, so it might not be working terribly well. We'll see. And by the way, today is all about tech and gear. Who is excited to know a little bit more about tech and gear? Cosmic asks a question, so this is great. I'm actually not going to be covering too much on lighting today because this is more to do with podcasting, but I will talk a little bit about lighting in a bit. So just very briefly on lighting, I think over the years, I've been a big believer in bootstrapping your live video studio, starting small and then adding bits over time. And I think that's the case with cameras and microphones and that kind of stuff. With lighting though, I think lighting is a bit more difficult. You have to make sure the lighting is the best setup for you and for your environment. And for me, I wish that I had invested my time and my money in a better lighting system right from the start. And the one that I go for is the Elgato key light. And I'll show you a little bit more about that later. I'm a massive fan of the Elgato key light, but I do have some other lighting as well. Oh, Katie says, whoa, it's working. It's pretty cool. That's awesome. So that's the audio ducking. I'll tell you a little bit more about that in a bit. Jeff says, Jeff C, my good friend Jeff, great to see you. Love the key light too. Great for standing desks. I haven't quite got an official standing desk yet, but let's move on to this. So we've tried the audio ducking. Just before I get on, I love this comment from Robert Kennedy saying loves my mic flag. This is cool. So I've got all of this information, by the way, on my gear guide, which Katie has put in the comments. Yeah, there we go. So if you go to iag.me/gear guide, you've got all of the gear that I recommend, including the key light and other stuff as well. And of course, this mic flag, where I get that from. And Katie has very kindly put in the comments some links to some resources on lighting. So that is great. So if you click on that video there in the comments, you'll find out more about that. If you just joined us, first of all, this is the show. This is the Podcaster Hour, which is from ECAMM Live, powered by ECAMM Live, and it helps you launch your podcast through the power of ECAMM Live. I needed reverb at that moment just to say the power of ECAMM Live. And it's hosted by me. My name's Ian Anderson Gray. I help entrepreneurs all around the world level up their impact, authority, and profits through the power of confident live video. And in today's show, we're talking all about gear and tech. So I'd love to know from you, what is your favorite gear and tech for either your live shows or your podcast? I'd love to know a little bit more about what you use. And I'd also want to know from you, what is stopping you from launching your podcast? Is it the tech and gear, or is it the mindset, or something else? In all of these episodes, I'm talking about all those different things here, whether it's mindset or tech and gear. And do check out last week's episode. My good friend Colin Gray was on the show. It was an awesome episode when he was sharing all his tips for launching a podcast and also doing that from a live show. First of all, we want to talk about the kind of gear that you need. What is it that you actually need for your live shows? And I've got some resources here. So this is what I think that you need. Now, you don't need ECAMM Live to launch a podcast, but if you're going to be broadcasting a live show and then turning that into a podcast, ECAMM Live makes it so easy for you, particularly the pro version, because you can save the video and the audio, but you can also split your voice and your guest's voice and all the different sound effects and all that kind of stuff on different tracks. So ECAMM Live is awesome. And that's what I recommend that you use to do your live show, to broadcast your live show, but also to turn it into a podcast. The next thing that you need, in my opinion, is just keep it simple. And this is what Colin Gray was talking about last week. All you need to start off with is an inexpensive USB dynamic mic. And I've actually got a few different microphones set up here that I want to demonstrate to you, including a relatively inexpensive one. It's a dynamic microphone. I will talk about the different types of mics. If you're going live and it's a live video, then you will obviously need a camera as well. Although you could go live just with audio and turn that into an audio podcast. Then you will need a podcast host. This is where your podcast is going to live. This is where it's hosted. And so you need to have a podcast host. And I've got some recommendations there. Now, that is really all you need to go live and to launch your podcast. But of course, there are always lots of other things that you could think of doing. So for example, your microphone, getting a boom arm that you can attach to your desk, a pop filter so that you can go pop, 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 without there being too much noise on your podcasts. A shock mount is also good, so you can bang the desk and it's not going to be, again, transmitting too much noise through there. Headphones. What on earth is a DBX2866S? Well, I'll talk about that in a bit. And then a podcast editing tool as well, so that you can edit that. Or, of course, you could just send that to a podcast editor. And then there's a couple of other tools that I want to talk about there. I'm talking about loopback and audio hijack. First of all, let's talk about microphones, because I think that's the first thing, obviously, is going to be the most important thing when it comes to podcasting. Now, you probably notice, first of all, on this show that I've got my microphone right in the middle of my shot. I'm not hiding it, and that is because I'm using a dynamic microphone. I need my microphone really quite close to my mouth. Now, if I go away, you probably still hear me. The volume really goes down, and if I go around here, you probably can't hear that very well. The disadvantage with having a dynamic microphone like this is that you need to be really close, and it does mean that you have to have the microphone in shot. Now, personally, I don't mind that. That's the kind of the vibe. That's the kind of look that I like. Because I'm turning this into a podcast, not this particular show, but for a lot of the shows that I do, I turn my Confident Live Marketing show into a podcast, then it's obvious that I'm going to have a microphone. And also with the mic flag, I think that adds a lot of extra branding. I don't know what you think about that, but for me, I think that's really important. But the most important thing with this dynamic microphone is that the quality is going to be really good. Now, remember that you couldn't hear me so well when I went round the back. The advantage of that is it's going to pick out less background noise. Now, I've got a laptop cooler. My fans are going on my computer. So there's actually quite a bit of background noise. I haven't got a treated room where I am in my house, in my office. I haven't spent all the time and the money putting acoustic tiles all over my room. And so a dynamic microphone is even more important for that. That's why I recommend a dynamic microphone as opposed to condensing microphones such as the Blue Yeti. They're great, but they tend to pick up a lot of extra noise in the background. So that's what I tend to recommend. So I'm going to show you the differences between those, but I just want to look over some of the comments that we've got here. Oh my goodness, so many comments. So this is a question from RJ Ronquillo. Says, hi everyone. What's everyone's opinion on using a broadcast mic versus a lavalier mic for live streams? I wouldn't say the choice is broadcast level microphone and a lapel microphone. I think there are lots of different microphones in between, but that does remind me, are you looking for almost like the naked look, which is no microphone in shot? If that's really important to you, then dynamic is not the way to go. You're going to have to go for a condenser microphone, whether that is a lapel microphone or a shotgun microphone, which is out of shot, or something like the Yeti. Or, of course, the other thing is if you've got a lot of treatment in your room, then you can go for a condenser microphone. And some of the really expensive ones are condenser microphones. So that's something to think about. India says, my Rodecaster Pro and my Stream Deck. Oh, my goodness. Now, I actually don't have a Rodecaster Pro. Everyone talks about how amazing it is, and it is awesome. It's great in that it does everything for you, particularly for live streams. I've got a slightly different setup, which I'll show you, but I absolutely do recommend the Rodecaster Pro. It's a bit pricey, but Robert says, I already have a podcast, but sometimes I get tired of doing the post-recording pieces. This is really interesting, Robert, because I'm thinking about the same thing. So I traditionally would do my show. I'd have a pre-show slot, which I then trim off in Facebook, LinkedIn, and YouTube. The first bit is only really for my live viewers. I then cut that out. And I also cut that out for the podcast as well. So that bit then is going to be the live show and the podcast. But when it comes to recording the podcast part of it, I then had to record the intro. I also record a theme song, and then I have to put something at the end. What I'm thinking about doing is just before I play the theme music, I'm going to then introduce the podcast live on air. So I don't have to re-record that. And I'm also thinking about doing my song live as well. Not quite sure how that's going to work. So yeah, just a thought about that. But I think you can definitely do most things during the live. There might still be a few things you need to do post as well. Environmental Coffee House says, I have a new Stream Deck and I haven't had the chance even to set it up yet. Yeah, I'm going to talk a bit more about Stream Decks in a bit. Aaron says, my favorite piece of equipment is this XLR headset from Audio Technics. I can podcast without worrying where my mouth is. Ooh, I wonder what that's like. That's an interesting one. I hadn't thought about that kind of microphone. So this microphone that I'm using here is a dynamic microphone. It has an XLR output, so you can't plug this directly into your computer. You need an audio interface, which I'll talk about in a bit. So this is not the microphone that I'd start off with. If you're wanting to start simply, I wouldn't go for this. But just to let you know, this is a Heil PR40 microphone. I love it. It works really well. But if you're just starting out, then I recommend one of these. This is a Samson Q2U microphone. And the great thing about this is, first of all, it's a dynamic microphone. It also has, if you can see, it has XLR and USB. So you can plug this directly into your computer. You don't need any extra gear. This costs between $60 and $80, possibly up to $100. I love it because it's a relatively inexpensive microphone, but the quality is great and it's got XLR and USB as well. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to just swap my microphone now from my Heil PR40 to the Samson Q2U. I can switch this in ECAMM Live. Okay, so now I'm using the Samson Q2U. So I'd love to know from you what you think about the quality of this. Can you hear any background noise going on? Shouldn't be able to hear too much, but you probably will hear a little bit more. The quality will be a bit different. Now, the levels will also be different as well. I haven't actually tested the levels here, but let me know. Now, is the quality significantly different to the Heil? Let me just switch over to the Heil now. Okay, so this is the Heil. This is the Heil PR40 microphone. What do you think about the difference between this and the Samson Q2U microphone? I'd love to know what you think about that. This is obviously less expensive. This is about $80, $60 to $80, whereas the Heil PR40 is around the $300 mark. So that's that. I'm going to go back to my Heil. Let me know what you think in the comments. Now, I do have to talk about this little beauty here. Anyone recognize this? Now, this is a very popular microphone. It's what I used for years when I first started my live shows and my podcast. I love it because it looks nice. It does look nice. It's a condenser microphone. The good thing about this is you don't have to be too close to it. So this is actually very good if you're wanting to do music. It's very good if there's more than one of you. It's great. It also has lots of different types of, I don't know whether you can see that, but different types of settings for the type of microphone that you want. You can put it on cardioid, which means it will only pick up in front of you. You can do interview mode, so it will pick up behind and in front. Stereo mode and omnidirectional, so it'll pick up everything around. It's great from that point of view. Also, it's USB. In this case, this is just the standard Blue Yeti. It is just USB. You can get the USB Pro, and the USB Pro has XLR. So if you are wanting to get a bit fancier later and do mixing desks and audio interfaces and things like that, then you'd need the Blue Yeti Pro. Interesting. Okay, so Alex says the gain was a bit high on the Samsung. And yeah, you're probably right, because I didn't actually test that, which I should have done beforehand. Martin said, big difference. The Katie says that Heil sounds fantastic. I think it's a little clearer. Now, it's interesting. So that was the Samsung. It's just fallen off the table. I think it's okay. So Joy says, I can hear the difference, but it wouldn't be worth the cost for us right now. And that's absolutely the case for so many people. Is this worth $300 for you? And the thing is, of course, it's not just this. You need to get like a boom. I've also got the shock mount and a pop filter, and you need an audio interface. So the whole thing is going to be more like $550 for that level of microphone. Your Positive Imprint podcast says, Heil PR40 is clearer with regards to background sounds. And that might be because I'm plugging it into an extra piece of kit, my DBX286S. Alex is helping me here. Yeah, thank you for this. Yes, so these are polar patterns. So this basically means that where it picks up the sound from your voice, is it just directly in front of the microphone? Is it around? The technical phrase for that is polar patterns. You don't need to know that, but that is technically what it is. We haven't actually heard the Yeti yet. So let's do that. So I'm going to put the Yeti on, and immediately I think you're going to hear some background noise. Let's just swap it now from, this is the Heil to the Yeti. So now I'm on the Yeti. So let's just, maybe I need to put the gain up. That might be too much. Hello? That's about right. Now, my Blue Yeti is down here. I'll just lift it up so you can see where it is. There we go. Blue Yeti is there. So I've not got it right up close. And immediately you can probably hear some background noise. Particularly if you're listening to this on headphones, you'll hear it more. But obviously I'm further away, so I can move this microphone out the way now. But if you're looking for a video feel where the microphone is out of shot, then a condenser microphone like the Blue Yeti might be good. But the problem with that is there's a compromise here in that you're picking up a lot more background noise. So the choice really is you put up loads of acoustic paneling around you, you go in a little box, or the other choice is just to bring the Yeti closer to you, but you also put the gain down. Yeah, see, I can't put the gain down too much. Let's just see. Let's just put that down. So that's probably okay. Let me know what you think. I might be going over a little bit, but hopefully the background noise is a little bit better. If I go over here, away from my computer, hopefully you're not hearing so much background noise. What people tend to do is this. They put the gain up, and they go far away from it. Okay, and they speak like this. Now, you can still hear me. It's probably picking up a lot more background noise. If the kids were in the next room watching Netflix, you'd be able to hear that, definitely. So, that's the Blue Yeti condenser microphone. Let's just change. Hold on. There we go. I've got the Heil back. So, those are the differences between the different types of microphone. Now, there's the lapel mic. Lapel mic is like a condenser microphone, but it's attached to you here. So again, it's going to pick up more background noise. And then, of course, there's the shotgun microphone, which you'll have out of shot. Again, it tends to pick up a bit more background noise. So you just need to be careful about that. Alex says, the Yeti is okay if you turn the gain down. That's exactly what I said. And get close to the mic. Otherwise, it's far too sensitive and the room tone is overwhelming. It's not a bad microphone to start off with, kind of, except I think that the Samsung QTU is a really good microphone to go for. But the other thing to say is it's very much a personal preference. The Heil PR40 that I've got, I love it. I love the sound it gives, but it's not necessarily going to be everyone's cup of tea. You've got to test these things out. But I'm a big fan. Cosmic says, I have the Blue Yeti. Great demo. So that's great. If you've got the Blue Yeti, I'm not saying to you that you need to change your microphone, okay? That's not what I'm saying. I don't want to put any barriers in the way of you launching your podcasts. So if you've got a Blue Yeti, go for it. Start off with that. But if you have a bit of budget, then go for the Samsung QTU and a boom, because I think that's going to be better for your podcasts because you're going to have less of that background noise. Now, on a live stream, a bit of background noise is not the end of the world. But for podcasting, because everything is audio, it matters a bit more, I think. So there we go. Aaron says, yeah, this is great advice. So the QTU and the ATR 2100, particularly if you're in the US, the ATR 2100 is a bit more difficult to get in other parts of the world, but both are really good. They're very similar. Either of those, I would highly recommend. And Alex says, the Heil is a fantastic mic. It's beloved by podcasters around the world. It really is. And it looks very nice. Now, I do want to, just before I get on with the next part of the show, I'm going to be talking about cameras. I'm going to show you a little bit more about my setup as well. But let's go back through all the things that you need. First of all, Ecamm Live. You can do a podcast without Ecamm Live, but it makes things a lot easier, particularly if you're streaming, you're doing it from a live show. You need a dynamic microphone, ideally. I've talked about that. Now, obviously, a camera if you're going to go live, and then I'm going to talk about podcast hosts and all that other kind of stuff. That really brings me on to what I've got set up here and just show you it. So this is how I started all my live streams. It's a Logitech C920 camera. Don't know whether it's going to go in focus or not. There we go. So Logitech C920 cameras they're inexpensive. They're a really good place to start. And so if you've got a limited budget, then I would recommend getting one of those or the C930. They're all pretty good. And I'm going to use this just to show you my setup. You have to excuse the messiness of my setup here. So I've got my extra monitor there. I've got my MacBook Pro there. And of course, I've got my Heil PR40 set up there as well. Now up here, you probably can't see this very well, but I've got a teleprompter with the iPad. It's quite an old iPad. This is an iPad version 3. And if I look around here, yeah, you saw my messy floor there. But that is a Canon camera. So a Canon M50 camera is awesome. That plugs directly into my computer. So I've actually got quite a few different things going on down here. So let me just show you. So I've got, oh, by the way, that's my Stream Deck. I've got a big Stream Deck there. I've got my Focusrite. I've got a Focusrite digital interface there. Back there, I've got a powered hub, which is important. And there, I've got my DBX 286S, which is what I use to do the processing. It's the pre-processing, just to get rid of any background noise. So what happens is, basically the sound from my Heil goes directly into this little baby here, the DBX286S. I'm not going to cover this in too much detail today because I've got my good friend Mike Russell from Music Radio Creative coming on. He's going to go into more detail about this. But basically that gets rid of any background noise. It makes my voice sound a little bit more punchy. So we've got a compressor there. We've got a de-esser to get rid of any kind of S sounds and things like that. And it's also got a noise gate as well. So then the output of that then goes into this little thing, the Scarlett Focusrite 2i2. And that's just a digital audio interface. You could just plug your XLR mics directly into that if you want, and then into your computer. Then that goes into my hub, the powered hub, and then that goes directly into my computer. So that's how that works at the moment. And the other thing, of course, we talked about lighting. That is my Elgato key light that I've got there. I've also got some other lights over here. That is a newer LED light. And I've also got one over there. Excuse the messy bookcases over there. And then behind, I've got my little tree with little lights on. And I've got 2 Hue light bulbs, which are cycling through different colors. So I can control that from my phone as well. So anyone else out there got a messy desk? I can't be the only one. So Environmental Coffee House says, great idea to use my old iPad as a teleprompter. So that teleprompter kit that I just got it off Amazon. It costs about $100, that kind of price. It's not amazing, but it does the trick. And I don't use that for a script. I just use that to remind me of certain things. So, for example, I'll just show you that. So there we go. That's the teleprompter here. And then this is the remote control. So I can adjust it with this remote control here so I know what I'm talking about. So what am I talking about? I've just talked about the different types of microphone. And yes, I'm going to talk about the boom arm, pop filter, and shock mounts. Let's just go back over here. So this is on a boom. And by the way, it's messy because we're going to be moving house in the next month or so. So I'm going to be building a new studio, which I'm excited about. This little thing here is the shock mount. This means that I can bump the table like this. You shouldn't hear too much background noise or bumps and things like that. And then I've got this. This is actually a Samsung boom arm, and that's connected to the table there. And I think that makes a big difference to the quality because it just means I can thump the table and I don't have to worry too much about the sound there. That is that. Awesome. And then the DBX286S, as I said, is completely optional. It's a bit more complicated. As I say, I'm going to get Mike Russell on the show to talk a bit more about that and to show you his studio. He is Mr. Audio. He does some amazing things. So that brings me on to the next important thing, which is the podcast hosts and some software that we're going to talk about. So what is next? So once you have gone live, you can then go and you've selected in fact, let me just show you this again. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to go into live demo mode. What you can then do is if you go into preferences, we've then got the option if we go to, now I can't select this at the moment because I'm already live, but at the bottom there it says record isolated audio tracks. And I've got that checked. So this means in addition to normal recording, Ecamm Live will record each audio track as a separate file. It says cannot be changed while streaming, obviously, because it's already recording that. So that's how you do that. And then that gives you the different options. So the different files that you can then bring into your podcast editor. In fact, let's talk about podcast editing first, because the ones that I recommend are either Audacity, which is a free version, Audition, or Colin Gray's tool, which you talked about last week, which is Alitu. And so just a little bit more about those. I'm not going to show you much about Audition. If you happen to have Creative Cloud subscription from Adobe, then I recommend spending the time to get to use Adobe Audition if you are interested in editing the podcast yourself. And that's what I did for quite a while. But if you're looking for a free tool, this works on both Macs and PCs, then this is the one that I recommend. It's called Audacity. It's a bit clunky. It's not the sexiest thing in the world, but it works really well. It's completely free. So Audacity, if you're wanting to learn how to edit your podcast yourself, this is what I recommend. And so what you can do, you can put the different tracks in Audacity. So you've got your track, you've got your guest's track, you've also got maybe sound effects and video tracks as well. And the great thing about that is, for example, say you have a coughing fit halfway through, you can edit that out and that's not going to come through on the guest's track. So Audacity is awesome. Now, if you're wanting to find a way of making it a bit easier, then there is a tool called Alitu. Alitu is great because it basically does everything for you. It doesn't just give you a really easy way to edit your podcast. It will also do all the cool things like normalize the audio levels and do all the optimization, really. So you don't need to worry about any of that kind of stuff. It does it all for you. You can upload your audio, first of all. It will then clean up your audio as well and edit your podcast episode as well. And then it even will publish it to to your podcast host all in one. And I think we like easy. So Alitu is great. It's not free. It's $28 per month, or you can do $280 for the year. And it is a really cool piece of kit. Now, that brings me on to podcast hosts. But before I do that, let's just have a little look at what people are saying. But Environmental Coffee House says, I really need an audio mixer for live guests to make everyone sound the same. This is one of my biggest issues. Now, that's interesting. Now, mixing desks, yeah, you totally can get one. And again, as I say, my friend Mike Russell's going to come on to talk about that in more detail, because mixing desks is not really something that I would say I'm an expert on, because I like to do everything from my computer. And in ECAMM Live, you don't actually need a mixer. I don't have any guests on at the moment, but if I did, I can adjust all the levels and make sure that they are all correct. So I can do that through sound level window. So let's just go back to the live demo mode. So here you can see the sound levels. At the moment, I haven't got any guests, but interview mode is there. Now, if I had a number of different guests, so they would appear here in the interview window. And that is where you can adjust the levels of each individual guest. You can mute them and you can change the audio levels that way. It would actually be more difficult for you to do that on a mixer, because you'd have to output them all and then input them back again, which is going to be a bit more tricky. So you don't actually need that. And Environmental Coffee House says, I use my pro video editor for shows we record through ECAMM that aren't live. I totally love ECAMM. And of course, the other tool that you could use is Descript. So let me just show you Descript. Descript is great because it also works with video. So the way you would do this is, so Descript.com, it is a way that you can bring in video from your show, and it will also detect, it will actually transcribe all the audio, and then you can then edit the audio just by selecting the words. So if you misspoke or your guest misspoke, you can just select the words that were incorrect and it will delete it from the video and the audio. And what's amazing is that it will actually export it in a format for all the different podcast editors. So if you use Adobe Audition, it will actually allow you to export it as an Audition file. It is unbelievable. So that's the other one I should have mentioned. Descript.com is pretty cool. Your Positive Imprint podcast says, I like using Descript to get the immediate transcripts. I can quickly edit out portions. Yeah, definitely. Descript is absolutely awesome. So let's talk about podcast hosts. So I think that's important to talk about. Let's go back to here. So this is Captivate. I've got all my episodes in here. So what I can do here is, once I've created my show in Captivate, I can then go and add my podcast episodes really quickly and easily. So I just go to publish episode, I'd upload my file there. And then what I do, I put in the title and the subtitle there, and the show notes. Episode type, is it a normal episode or is it a trailer or a bonus, which is cool. If I'm using seasons, I would change that. I don't do seasons, so I just put the episode number in there. Am I using any bad words or anything like that? Any naughty words? Do I want to mark it as explicit? I can do that. And of course, then I can add the URL to where the episode is on my website as well. And then, of course, you can put your publish date there. Now, what I really love about Captivate is the ability then just to, with one click really, to publish to Apple Podcasts, to Spotify, Google Podcasts, Amazon Music, Podcast Index, Player FM, Deezer, Ghana, I think you pronounce it, Stitcher, RP, TuneIn, and Pocket Casts. It is amazing the way that works. And then what I do is, if I just go to iag.me/podcast, I then have one page where I put all my episodes. So I use my WordPress website. Let's just scroll down. And so you can see, oh, look, we've got Katie here. She was on episode 91. So if we click on that, I then embed the player, the podcast, on the blog. So I've got a little description there. And then there, once this loads, that is hosted by Captivate. So people can play and do it there. And of course, you can watch the video as well. So that's how I do it. I use Captivate FM, works really, really quickly and easily. Love it. So definitely do that. Positive Imprint Podcasters Captivate FM is really super friendly. Yay, Mark and team. Just thought I'd shout out how easy Captivate FM is. Yeah, it is awesome. I didn't realize this, but I was actually the first ever customer of Captivate FM. When was it? So this was in 2019, May 2019. So yeah, it's really cool either way. They've added so many extra features like that. Robert Kennedy says, does the episode auto-publish from Captivate to the blog page? And yes, it can do that. I choose not to do that because I prefer to have more control over my blog posts. But for most people, you'll want to use their automatic publishing system. So either they will actually create a whole podcast website for you integrated with it, or you can use their WordPress plugin, which will sync it all out. So it is awesome that way. Sunny Fridge says, wow, I look forward to trying Captivate FM. It is awesome. It's really cool. It's not the cheapest, but it is just so cool. It just does everything really quickly and easily. Doc Rock says, in Captivate versus Podbean, do they own any of our rights? So Podbean is great. That is a really good question about do they own any of our rights. I don't know the answer to that question, except that I know the founder of Captivate really well. He's called Mark Asquith, and I would be very doubtful whether they do anything dodgy like that. They are awesome. They have done so many things to build a podcast host that is the best in the industry. I will ask Mark about that. He's going to come onto the show. So I don't entirely know the answer to that question, but I'd be very doubtful if you need to worry about that. Robert says, does that include thumbnails, etc.? Currently on Libsyn, but I may want to check out some of the other stuff. Yeah, I used to use Libsyn. It's a good host. A little bit clunky in my opinion, but it works. It works really well. In terms of, it basically syncs over. So it's really cool. So there we go. We're almost at the end of the show. I've gone through what you need. Ecamm Live, ideally Pro, USB dynamic microphone. I know that Doc Rock did some really cool talking about the differences between the different types of microphone. So definitely check out some of his stuff. It's awesome. But if you've just joined, do go back to earlier on when I was demonstrating the difference in real time between something like the Heil PR40, a dynamic microphone, the Samson Q2U microphone like this, or something like the Blue Yeti microphone like that. Then you need a camera, you need podcast host, and then all the other stuff you can get, like a boom arm, pop filter, shock mount, all those kind of things. It's really cool. So that's all the stuff that you need. And there we go. There's the gear guide. This goes through all the tools that I use, including software, my studio, cameras, webcams, audio stuff, all that kind of cool stuff there. So definitely check that out. So I think we're almost at the end of the show. I'm going to go through just to see if there are any other questions. I'm also just going to check the cool ducking feature. And I want to show you what I'm doing here with the ducking. Go back to the ducking mode. So hopefully this is working. Let me know if you can hear this. I love this. Jason says, better not show that Blue Yeti to Diana Gladney. No, absolutely. So yeah, the Blue Yeti is interesting. People get all funny about this and they don't like it. And so I started off with this. It's not what I'd recommend today, but it's fine. I would recommend Samson Q2U like this. And if you can, go for something a little bit nicer like the Heil. Chris says, hi, just arrived. Don't worry because there is the replay. You can go back and watch the replay. Environmental Coffee House says, I enjoy and have learned so much with Ecamm and everyone that is associated. Well, it's great that you're here. Glad that we were able to help. I'm just going to share my screen. Okay, so this is as I finish, this is a tool called Audio Hydrack. And what it allows me to do is create different audio devices with different things. So just to show you what's happening here, this is the Scarlett 2i2. This is the sound coming from my microphone. And then down here, I've got the audio from my Stream Deck. And this has gone into a ducking module. So what this does, it will actually bring down the volume of the music when I'm speaking. When I don't speak, the volume goes up. And this goes into an audio device that I'm then using in Ecamm. So that is that, but also I can add some reverb as well. So I can add some reverb. So if I just do this, you can hear. So I'm going to switch that off. But there we go. That is some reverb there, which is really cool. So definitely check that out. Now, that's enough of that. Let's just switch that off there. Cool. That is the end of the show today. Thank you so much. Awesome. That's it. I will see you next week. So I encourage you to launch your podcast with confidence through the power of Ecamm Live. See you soon. Bye.
Thanks for watching the Podcaster Hour from Ecamm, helping entrepreneurs, business owners, and live streamers launch a podcast with success using the power of Ecamm Live. That's it for this week, but do tune in next time. See you soon and toodaloo.